All right, listen, Rob. Nobody wants to hear your rant about the Raptors offense right now because we just lost to the Sixers and Tyrese Maxey looked like prime Kobe Bryant and Joel Embiid didn't even play. And our starting point guard couldn't score and Scottie Barnes was on the bench for what felt like 3 hours. And this is just not the right time for a 50-minute rant about the Raptors offense. And let's be honest, every single time you make any sort of mention of Pascal Siakam, you lose 50 subscribers. And you're on a roll with really positive videos right now. I mean, you made 2 really positive videos about Scottie Barnes and Christian Coloco, and no one was really hating on those, and your subscribers grew a lot. And you should keep doing that because nobody wants to hear negative things about a team that they follow. Nobody. No matter how open-minded they are, nobody really wants the truth. I mean, that's just stupid, right? And you've been telling people for a really long time that you're a pretty smart guy, and you named your basketball channel Pensare Basketball, which effectively in Italian means to think. So technically you're ripping off Thinking Basketball. Side note. There's no way that you're stupid enough to make a 50-minute rant about Pascal Siakam not being a real superstar and the Raptors offense being broken and how Scottie Barnes needs the ball more right now. Like, that would be really stupid, right? Do it! Yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. If you're new around here, my name is Robert. This is going to be a rant on basketball. Hit subscribe, hit like, grab your coffee. Let's get to it. One memory that I keep going back to is Vince Carter and the New Jersey Nets come to face Toronto. And Chris Bosh steps to the line. And as he's about to hit a free throw, fans start chanting MVP, MVP. The entire arena is going nuts with these MVP chants for Chris Bosh. I will never forget it because I was there. I remember Vince turning to the crowd, a crowd that he had looked at once with admiration, and he turned to the entire Raptor fan base with disgust on his face, and he said, MVP, come on. And it was in that moment that I realized that fans can be convinced of just about anything because Chris Bosh was not a superstar. He was not an MVP. He averaged 24 points per game, 10 rebounds. Yes. He was an all-star. Yes. An all-star starter. Yes. He had that fantastic and funny and very creative all-star ad, and I will never forget it. But Chris Bosh was not a superstar. He was not a superstar. He won 3 games, 3 playoff games as a Toronto Raptor. And as a fan base, we talked about how Chris Bosh didn't have enough help, how Andrea Bargnani couldn't grab a rebound, how Brian Colangelo and Rob Babcock were so inept, and how Bosh was just going to be the next Garnett or the next Duncan, just toiling away in mediocrity up in the north, and that was all a lie. That was a lie. The truth is, Chris Bosh didn't have help. Yes, Chris Bosh was the help. That's the point, right? He wasn't a superstar. But we talked about him like a superstar. We thought that the American media was biased. We thought that, oh, they're just not giving us our flowers. So, look, I'm not blind to the comments here. I understand. I read them every single day. I almost have... Last year, I spent all year on Facebook and on other channels before we really launched this channel, and some parts of this channel as well, talking about how much I did not want to see Fred VanVleet dribbling the ball for 22 seconds on every possession. And all I got back from Raptor fans was, Freddie All-Star, are you embarrassed? He just made the All-Star team. You should apologize, blah, blah, blah. I got into fights with his family, man. I'm not kidding. The guy who runs his Fred VanVleet merch brand actually messaged me, and we got into like a back and forth on Facebook. It was nuts. It seems crazy now when I think about it. Now, I don't like kicking people when they're down. You haven't heard one peep about Fred VanVleet from me all year. He's actually playing really well. I have nothing bad to say. Even though tonight he had like no points, 1 point, he shot 0 for 11. I'm not saying anything bad about him. Bad shooting nights happen. I don't think he's healthy. I don't kick people when they're down. I kick people when they're up. I kick people when they're straight across. Like, I didn't talk crap about Chris Bosh when he became a role player for the Miami Heat. No, I reserved my crap that I was going to talk about Chris Bosh for when Raptor fans were telling me that he was on par with Kevin Garnett. I didn't talk smack about Russell Westbrook when he went to the Lakers and started basically becoming the worst player in the NBA. No, I wrote an article when he won MVP saying that he shouldn't have won MVP because my mother taught me you don't punch down. You punch up and you punch across. And I'm sorry, man. I have listened. Look, there's a myth that players are just going to become who they become. And if Drazen Petrovic does not get traded to the Nets, we are not talking about a Hall of Famer. We are not talking about an all-star because he was buried. Opportunities are not equal in the NBA. That's just the truth. There's 5 guys on the court, 13 to 15 guys on a roster. There's 1 ball. So if your coach, for whatever reason, and there's a lot of reasons, it could be a bias. It could be, they went to the same alma mater. It could be a race thing, right? There's a white coach. There's a white point guard. Okay. It could be that. It could just be we came up in the system together. So I'm just going to ride or die with this guy. We all have biases. I don't pretend to not have biases. I do. I try to evaluate mine. Have you evaluated yours? Let's talk about that. Look, I don't think that opportunities are equal. I don't think OG Anunoby has had an equal opportunity to a lot of other players in the NBA. I don't think, for instance, I'll give you an example. One of the greatest players of all time, and you would be shocked to hear anybody today talk about him as one of the greatest players of all time, Arvydas Sabonis. Do I think that the Portland Trail Blazers, when they were getting walked by the Lakers, should have run more of their offense through Arvydas Sabonis? Yes, I do. And Rasheed Wallace and Brian Grant were 2 of my favorite players. I think that there's a reason why certain teams gravitate towards certain guys. It's a seniority thing. I've been here for 8 years. This is my team, that whole thing. Do I think Giannis, had he not had a coach like Jason Kidd, who put the ball in his hands on day 1, even before he was ready, and said, here, man, I know you're raw, you're young, but we are going to try to run you at point guard to develop your skills. You think that was a popular move? But man, it paid off, right? Because Giannis might actually go down as one of the greatest players of all time, if not the greatest player of all time in 20 years when we have this discussion. And I think that the early investment that Jason Kidd made in his development, at the expense of somebody else's development, I'm sure, paid off. Now, you don't have to tell me about fake superstars. I was a Knicks fan for my entire childhood. Growing up in New York, I saw a lot of fake superstars, man. And New York fans, Knicks fans, no offense, you love to talk about guys on your team like they're like way better than they are, and they're not. And we've always done it. So you don't need to tell me about fake superstars. I feel like I could write a dissertation on fake superstars being sold a myth about how good a player is. Okay? Last year, Raptor fans were telling me about Fred VanVleet being, one of the top 3 point guards in the NBA. For real? Are you crazy? Look, he's not. He's not. He's just not. And I respect Fred VanVleet. I respect the hell out of him. I think he's a really good player. I think the analytics are telling you the truth, that he is one of the top 12, 10 point guards in the NBA. That's as far as I'm going with that. I'm sorry. There are too many limitations in this guy's game. I don't care how well this system optimizes him so that his numbers inflate and he has this crazy LeBron metric and crazy box plus minus. I don't care. This is an analytics driven channel, but I am not blind to what I'm watching on the court. Okay. Now, Raptor fans want to talk about Pascal Siakam like he's a top 10 player. Is that fair? Top 10? Because I've been reading a lot of comments on Reddit, Real GM, whatever. And people have this idea that I am just unfairly, unabashedly hating on this guy. And I'm not. I'm not hating on anybody. I don't hate these players. I don't know these players. There's really one player on the Raptors team that I actually know. And I adore him. But to be honest, most of these guys, they're just on my television or on the court. I don't hate Pascal Siakam. I didn't hate Fred VanVleet. I don't hate Gary Trent Jr. I don't hate Chris Boucher. I don't hate these players. I may hate how they're being used in the offense. Now, look, you cannot make cake with stale eggs. That is not the right way to do it. What would have happened if the Milwaukee Bucks had said, listen, we spent this number 2 overall pick on Jabari Walker. Was that it? He's so irrelevant that I am forgetting his name. And I'm a basketball encyclopedia. Okay. Jabari Parker. It's not Jabari Walker, it's Jabari Parker. Okay. What if the Milwaukee Bucks had just said, you know what? Screw this Greek kid who's flashing all this athletic potential and has this killer mentality. We are going to build around Jabari Parker because that is who we invested a top 2 pick in. You don't think that's happened before? You don't think some upstart, great potential 19, 20-year-old came into the NBA and just had his entire development curve mishandled by a terrible coaching staff or a GM who hated him, whose predecessor had drafted him, and he just got caught in the politics in the NBA and he was out of the league, and maybe he just got depressed and started to hate basketball and you just never saw it. We talk about these players like they're simulations or machines. They are not. They're human beings. And the truth is that the Raptors have, in my opinion, a superstar in Scottie Barnes. I really believe that. I'm not lying to you. I really believe that. And I believe that because I live and breathe, man. I've watched the NBA for 25 years. I have seen superstars emerge. I've seen fake stars fail year after year after year in the playoffs. I have watched it. It's not just about numbers. Yes, 25 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists. This looks great. Not the first player to put up those numbers, by the way. Not the first. Okay, and not the last. You have a lot of possessions. You lead the league in field goal attempts. Okay, you handle the ball like every single possession for your team. You have a 30% usage rate. You're a fairly decent rebounder. Here's a stat to blow your mind. Precious Achiuwa per 100 possessions is twice the rebounder that Pascal Siakam is. Does that blow your mind? Do you think Precious Achiuwa is a generational rebounder? So what does it say that Pascal Siakam is half as good at rebounding as not a generational rebounder? What does that say? Does it blow your mind that Pascal Siakam is shooting 55% true shooting? That's 7th on his own team through 5 games. And through 5 games, he was leading the league in field goal attempts. So the guy who's leading your team and the league in field goal attempts is 7th on his own team at making those field goal attempts. That doesn't make sense to me. That sounds to me like an offense that is deliberately trying to prop up one player to be something that he's not. Because I'm going to be honest with you, if Giannis was shooting 55% true shooting on the season instead of what he's probably shooting right now, which is probably close to 70%, I think Milwaukee fans would be saying, what's wrong with Giannis? But that's not what Raptor fans are saying about Pascal Siakam. No, they're saying, oh my God, Rob, you need to eat crow because he finished top 4 in the MVP ladder. You know who finished top 4 in MVP voting one year? Peja Stojakovic. One of my favorite players growing up, Peja Stojakovic. I used to be called Peja Stojakovic because, people on the basketball court are unimaginative and I sort of look like him and we're from the same country and I had a Peja jersey. So people called me Peja Stojakovic. Peja Stojakovic is one of my favorite players. Would I build an NBA offense that I expected to be a championship contender around Peja Stojakovic? No. But he finished top 4 in MVP voting one year. For a whole year, not a week. For the whole year. Because his numbers were astronomical, because there were a lot of injuries, and because he's a good scorer. But he's not a first option. You can't run a playoff offense through Peja Stojakovic. You can't run a playoff offense through Jermaine O'Neal. You couldn't run a playoff offense through Chris Bosh. Now, a lot of people are clowning Ben Simmons really hard right now. Guess who is the leading win share guy for the 2016 draft? Guess who leads the 2016 draft in win shares? Do you think it's Pascal Siakam or Domantas Sabonis? Nope. Despite playing 2 fewer years and a lot less games, Ben Simmons is still leading his draft in win shares. That's not a joke. I'm not kidding. The gap between Siakam, this de facto superstar that Raptor fans are just so gung-ho over shoving down everyone's neck that this guy is the guy. Trust me, man, he's not. Okay. And you know what? Look, I've been wrong before. I have been wrong about players before, and I will admit that there are players that I was unusually high on in my life that I've been wrong. And then there are players that I was like, yeah, this guy's not gonna be good. And he turned out to be really good. But I have never seen a player play for 6+ years and been wrong about him. It's never happened. I'm sorry. I have too much data, too many points, too many experiences watching this guy. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, not happening. It's not going to happen. I have seen Pascal Siakam in the playoffs. You know, he doesn't have Chris Paul level choker, right? We forgive the bubble, right? We ignore that it happened because there was a pandemic and there was some mental health stuff, okay? What about the rest of it? Like, seriously, what about the rest of it? Let me ask you a question. You know, I remember watching the Lakers games, and this is when Shaq and Kobe were dominating. And I always remember, like, Horace Grant used to get like a ton of points in like the first quarter, and then he just wouldn't score for the rest of the game. Is Pascal Siakam Horace Grant? Okay, that's overkill. But seriously, when a player scores is important. How a player scores is important to me. May not be to you, but it's really important to me how a player is scoring and how efficiently they're scoring and who against whom they're scoring. I don't care that Pascal Siakam can dog walk George Niang. I don't care. Niang sucks. He's the worst. He's one of the worst defenders in the league. And the Sixers were playing Siakam today straight up. They were daring him to shoot last game when he hit those threes in the first quarter, when he had that crazy first quarter and my phone's blowing up like, oh my God, you're going to eat crow about your takes about Pascal Siakam. You're going to look so stupid. Yeah. I seem to remember that he scored like 5 points the rest of the game. Is that correct? Someone correct me in the comments. Yeah, because when a defense is testing you out, man, trust me, like, look, maybe I'm brainwashed because I love Athletic Alchemy, and Athletic Alchemy spent an entire year calling Siakam small bag Siakam. And maybe that's just washed into my brain. Maybe I'm not over the pandemic. I mean, maybe I'm not over the bubble. Maybe there's a part of me that really legitimately believes that that Raptor team, the year after Kawhi left, had a chance. And because Siakam just didn't show up in the playoffs, because he didn't touch a basketball for 4 months for whatever reason, because he couldn't get to a gym, that there's a part of me that feels like, I feel like the Raptors were better than the Heat that year. I feel like the Raptors could have had a second, I don't want to say championship, okay, maybe not championship, but I mean, a second finals appearance? Do you know how rare it is to get to the finals? The Sacramento Kings haven't been to the playoffs in 16 years. Do you know how rare it is to get to the finals? Do you know how many teams would kill to get to the finals? To have a team that is just so good. Marc Gasol, you're wasting the final really good year of Kyle Lowry, Norman Powell, Serge Ibaka, OG Anunoby. Like, that was a good team. Fred VanVleet off the bench. That was a deep team. Well, not off the bench. He was like that undersized backcourt that I didn't like. But that was a deep team. And Siakam started that season out with so much promise and so much hope, and it just went away. And, you know, I don't think last year was great. It was good. It was major improvement over Tampa. Way better, okay? Tampa was bad. So there was like a 2-year stretch or a 1.5-year stretch where this guy just wasn't that great, and it was right in his prime. And so there's a trust issue here too, right? It's the way that Suns fans feel when Chris Paul and Devin Booker gets to the playoffs. There's a feeling that I'm not sure what I'm getting here. Now, I don't have that feeling with Scottie Barnes. I don't have that feeling with OG Anunoby, if he's healthy. I don't have that feeling with Luka Doncic. I don't have that feeling. I never even had that feeling with Vince Carter. Because I knew that in the toughest games, when defenses close in and those gaps shrink, that this guy was good enough, talented enough, strong enough mentally, physically, to do something. I never doubted for a second that shot that Kawhi took was going to go in. It was the most crazy shot. It was super improbable. I can't believe it. He was shooting terribly that game. There was no part of me that rationally should have believed that shot was going to go in. But I'm telling you that before it went up, I screamed at the bar for like 300 people to hear, "That's in. There's no way Kawhi Leonard misses that shot. There are so many big moments that I can remember where certain players just come up short. It's not just Siakam, man. There's a lot of players. Chris Bosh, time and time again, just surveying the court, getting beat up by Mickey Moore, what was his name? In the playoffs, that year that the Raptors had that redemption season, and your best player gets shut down by Mickey Moore. And it's like, this is over. This would never happen to someone who's made of the right stuff. Now, do I believe a player can develop that? No, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't. You can develop your skills, you can become a better shooter, you can do a lot of stuff, but the mental part of the game, the part that made Jordan a killer, the part that makes James Harden a notorious playoff choker, the part that gets Tracy McGrady wiped in the first round every single year, and then that 1 year he doesn't play, his team actually makes it out of the first round, the part that gets Kobe with a busted hand, busted leg, busted face, whatever, through an improbable matchup because he just pushes it through. Man, this game is mental. It is mental. Okay? And I don't care about stats in October. I don't care about stats in December. I don't care if he makes the All-Star team, the All-NBA team. I don't care if he makes first team All-NBA this year. Until I see it in the playoffs, I'm not apologizing to anybody. And I'm not hating. I'm just saying that I have seen too many teams try to prop up a guy who is not built for those bright moments, and they force-fed him shots, and they dominated possessions with this guy, and he put up this impressive stat line of like 27 points and 12 rebounds, 18 rebounds, whatever. And everyone was like, oh my God, this guy's like the next great thing. And then the minute it matters, it all falls apart. Because I think that's what makes the playoffs so great. Because you can't fake it anymore. You see, in the regular season, you can fake it. You play against bad teams, you put up these big stats, but the greatest players don't get up for those games. Look at Scottie Barnes' biggest games last year. Like, really take a look at it. You think he was putting up his 30-point big nights against Sacramento and Detroit? No, he saved his biggest performances for the best teams against the best superstars. That's what superstars do. Numbers don't matter. A contested offensive rebound and a wide open defensive rebound still count as one rebound. A pass, full court, behind the back, eyes closed, which results in a game winner to an open, streaking guy down the court, that is still one assist. And literally passing out of a double team that you didn't see coming, passing off angle, out of control, on the floor, it ends up in a guy's hand, that guy throws up a Hail Mary and it goes in. That's also an assist. These numbers don't matter that much. I'm telling you. Yeah, it's promising. It's promising that a guy is averaging 25, 8, and 9. It's promising. It's very promising. It's not that promising that he's doing it on low efficiency, but it is promising overall that he's putting up big numbers. And generally speaking, when we see big numbers, we assume this guy must be a superstar because someone's letting him put up this team, this coaching staff, this management has chosen him to take these shots, and therefore he must be worthy of taking these shots. Well, so I ask you, was Carmelo Anthony worthy of taking all those shots? Now, Carmelo Anthony is a generational offensive talent. Maybe we're reaching too hard here. Was Ron Mercer, in his sole year as a first option for the Chicago Bulls, way back when, after Jordan retired, was he worth all the shots that he took? Was Jeremy Grant worthy of being a first option for Detroit? Now, those teams sucked, okay? Those teams were bottom feeders, and so nobody took those stats seriously, because if you put up 24 points per game on a really bad team, people just think you're an empty calories guy. That's how we feel about Christian Wood. Nobody thinks about Christian Wood the same way they think about Pascal Siakam, and they shouldn't. Christian Wood is not that good. He's a loser, right? That's the narrative, right? He's a loser, right? Well, what if Christian Wood this year for the Dallas Mavericks puts up like 24 points per game and they're in the playoffs? Will that change everything? But what has changed? Luka has changed. But everything changes, right? The narrative changes. So what if the Raptors aren't that great because of their offense? What if the Raptors' offense is actually terrible? And it is. It is terrible because it's not structured. It lacks talent. It lacks playmaking. It lacks pecking order, or at least what I think is proper pecking order. So what if the Raptors' offense really isn't that great? What if it hasn't been that great for 3-4 years? I think that's fair. It has never been a top 5 offense. In terms of how I view what a top 5 offense should be, it hasn't been. Okay. The Tampa year was obviously terrible, but even last year, it wasn't a great offense. It was a fairly rudimentary, somewhat predictable offensive system, which was predicated on isolations and dribble handoffs. What if the Raptors are really good because of their defense? What if you had a team of like 4 generational defenders and one kind of okay defender who was the only guy on the team that could really create a shot for himself, and that guy ended up putting up like 24 points per game, but the team was a title contender? Would that player be viewed as a superstar? Maybe. In 2001, they surely would have been viewed as a superstar because nobody cared about field goal percentage in 2001. Allen Iverson was regularly scoring like 39, 41, 42% from the field, and nobody seemed to care because the narrative was he doesn't have help. He doesn't have help. That's a lie, you see, because the Sixers had help for him. He just wouldn't pass. He wouldn't pass to his help. So they were like, you know what? This guy's not going to pass to offensive players anyway. Let's just trade every offensive player we have for a defensive player. So let's get Eric Snow, George Lynch, Tyronn Hill. Let's get Dikembe Mutombo. And let's try to build a defensive juggernaut around our inefficient offensive superstar, MVP, who won't pass, who's selfish. Allen Iverson was selfish. You want me to say it? One of my favorite players. He was selfish. Russell Westbrook is selfish. Carmelo Anthony was selfish. And none of those guys have a championship ring. Color me surprised. I don't think Pascal Siakam is selfish. I think he's misguided. I think this organization has propelled him to the status of star because when Kawhi left, there was a hole, a vacuum, and they needed to fill it because they need to fill the seats because MLSE is a business and you are a consumer. And so they said, well, by the way, may I just say, I was very surprised that they did not trade him for that reported Thunder package. If that was a real deal, wow. But they had this guy and they were like, you know what? Screw this guy who's leaving. Well, not screw this guy who's leaving. There's no ill will towards Kawhi in Toronto, but forget about the guy who's leaving and going to LA, going to sunny pastures. We've got this emerging guy and he's really good. He's really good and he's younger and we're going to build a team around him and we're going to be just fine. And then we did that for a year and it didn't work. And then we did that for another year and it didn't work. And we did that last year and it worked a little bit better. But then once again, we got bounced in the first round. How many years are we going to do this? You know, I would feel so much more comfortable with the Raptors' future if they would just come out and be like, you know what? This guy is going to be a top 20 player, maybe a top 15 player, but we view him as a second option. And we don't know if Scottie Barnes is the first option, but we are not going to stop until we find that first option. May it be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. May it be a draft pick that we pick up 2 years from now. We are going to keep plugging because we know after 3 years of experiencing this, that this guy is not built mentally, physically, or otherwise to be a first option on a title contender. And we want titles because I seem to recall Masai Ujiri saying, we only care about titles. So what I have a problem with, and maybe it's my Asperger's acting up, but what I have a problem with is if you're going to tell me that your team is building on titles, like you just care about titles, then I have a problem if Pascal Siakam is your de facto first option going forward. Now, you can let me know in the comments below if you disagree with that. This is a rant. This is totally a rant. And obviously, I have put no thought into any script. This is not a script. I just feel like today I have been hit with like 1,000 positive comments about the last 2 videos about Scottie Barnes and Christian Coloco. And it's all positive. And every 10 minutes, there's one more comment about, hey, you were wrong about Pascal Siakam. He's on the MVP ladder. Bro, seriously, man. Look, I hope that Pascal Siakam emerges into an MVP candidate. I really do. Good for him, man. Take care of your family. Okay? Get that Supermax extension. Because if he makes All NBA, you're paying him 35% of the cap next time. Great. Bet on yourself. Do all that. Fred VanVleet, do I think he's a superstar? No, I don't. Will he be probably paid like a superstar at some point? Probably. Sure. He's important. He's a really good player. But all of last year, when I was saying, I don't think Fred VanVleet is a superstar, people were calling me a hater. They were like, oh my God, you're legitimately hating on Fred VanVleet. It's irrational. It's not irrational. What is irrational is telling me that a guy who's probably a top 35 to top 45 player in the NBA is a superstar. That is irrational. That's insane. That is not watching other teams play. That is valuing your own guy over another guy. Now, everyone's saying because Pascal Siakam is fourth, on the MVP ladder, that he's better than Jason Tatum. Are you crazy? Okay. Or he's like, look, there are 10 guys that eyes closed, don't look, I would trade Siakam for in a heartbeat. I swear to God. I would trade him for Embiid, Giannis, Jokic, Zion, heartbeat. Tatum, Luka, Ja, heartbeat. Okay? Evan Mobley? Oh, yeah. Totally. Whoever has the first pick next year for Victor Wembanyama, probably that too. Okay? And there's probably another 8 guys that I'm not thinking about right now. That's not a superstar. You think I would have traded Tim Duncan in his prime for more than 2 other players? Or maybe even 1 other player? No way. I don't even think, by the way, this is totally off topic. I think that Giannis right now is better than LeBron. Okay? I think Giannis right now is about as good, if not better than LeBron ever was. I think Luka at 22 is better than LeBron at 21, 22. I really do. His shooting, his everything is just, it's on another level. Right? So there's some serious talent in the league right now. So I don't think that I'm saying something wrong by saying that there's 10 guys, 12 guys, 13, 15 guys, whatever, that I would trade for Siakam. I don't think that that's disrespectful or rude. This is a really talented league. And if this was 2001, and Pascal Siakam was doing what he's doing right now, okay. Top 10. Easy. Top 10. Top 10, top 11. But you know who else was a top 10, top 11 player during that era? Jerry Stackhouse. Okay? Chris Webber. These are not names on the top, 25, top 50 player lists. These are not. They're Hall of Famers, some of them, yes. Okay? But they're not. There's a gap, in my opinion, between superstars, generational superstars, all NBA guys, all-stars, and then fringe all-stars. Domantas Sabonis was a fringe all-star. Okay? Pascal Siakam, to me, was a fringe all-star who has turned into an all-NBA guy. But the curve is not linear. It is exponential. Because in a game like basketball, where there's only one ball and 5 guys on the court, the value of a superstar, like Kawhi, 2019, that's a superstar. Giannis today, that's a superstar. Okay? LeBron, 2012, that's a superstar. Steph Curry, 2016, that's a superstar. Speaking of Steph Curry, not to go off topic, but do you know that there was a real time when the Golden State Warriors, with all their genius and infinite wisdom, were debating between Steph Curry and Monta Ellis? Can't have both of them. Gotta pick one. That's the truth. There was a time when that was a real debate. There was a time when Jabari Parker needs more shots and this Giannis kid is taking too many attempts was a thing. People thought that. How do you rationalize it? Look, every single person who talks about the NBA has been wrong at least 100 times. I guarantee it. I'm no exception. I will take the L in the face if at the end of the year, I'll tell you right now, let's make a deal, channel. If at the end of the year, the Raptors are a top 4 team, Pascal Siakam is firmly in the top, 8, top 7 conversation. No, we don't have to go top 5. Top 8, top 7, do that. Get to where Jason Tatum was last year, and I'll give you your flowers, okay? And the Raptors make it out of the first round, and he does well, I will shut up. I will shut up for the next year about Siakam, okay? I will make you that deal. Let's see it happen. Look, I'm a Raptor fan. I hope it happens. But what I don't want to happen is I don't want what I believe to be a superstar in Scottie Barnes, an emerging superstar, to be left down the pecking order, because right now he is 4th on your team in field goal attempts per 100 possessions. How can you rationalize that? Every sane person who covers the NBA knows that he is the future of this franchise. How is he 4th in your pecking order? Okay, fine. Field goal attempts per 100 possessions is not everything, and this is where people say, okay, well, you're cherry picking, Rob, because he's 3rd in usage. How is he 3rd in usage? Okay, small sample size. Chris Boucher is not really 2nd in usage, right? Even though he is 2nd in usage, and the more he plays, the more he will be 2nd in usage, because Chris Boucher has never met a shot he didn't like. Even though I've kind of come around to liking Chris Boucher, let's just be honest. Chris Boucher and Gary Trent Jr. have never met a shot that they don't like, and they're never going to pass. They're never going to pass to anybody. Chris Boucher passing to Gary Trent Jr. today was the funniest thing I've ever seen, because I'm like, this is like stalemate. It's like one guy will never pass to the other guy, and the other guy will never pass to the other guy, and these two guys are now on a fast break together, and one of them passed. It was like a miracle. It was like witnessing the birth of Jesus. But seriously, what I'm trying to say here is that I don't think that I want to see 3 more years of playoff failures until we inevitably hand the torch over to Scottie, because I believe that having those experiences now, as the guy who has to make the choice, as the guy who has to make the big shot, going through those failures right now is going to benefit us 3-4 years from now. And if championships are the goal, and if we agree, and we may not agree, but if we agree that this one guy cannot lead you to a championship, then what is the point of running an offense through him right now at the expense of the other guy? What are you losing by just saying, okay, Pascal, we love that you can handle the ball, and when Scottie's not on the court, you can handle it all you want. But right now, we're going to give him the reps because his development is fundamental to our future. But instead, what we have is kind of a no man's land situation where you have a 21-year-old and a 28-year-old who occupy all the same places on the court, pretty much, who have pretty much identical strengths and weaknesses. Downhill gravity, yes. Shooting, no. Like, come on, man. They're pretty much the same size. And the only real difference, in my opinion, if you want to hand Scottie Barnes 31% usage right now and give him league-leading field goal attempts, yeah, his percentages will drop a little bit. He won't shoot the same percentage he's shooting right now, but I guarantee you, give him the same minutes, same touches, same opportunities as Siakam has right now, he probably has more assists, probably slightly fewer points, maybe just as many rebounds. There's a world in which, let's say we just port Scottie Barnes over to the Detroit Pistons and give him Cade Cunningham's role, that he would be putting up almost identical numbers to Pascal Siakam. I guarantee it. Injury or not, okay, he's been a little bit injured. He's way better this year, man. Now, you can talk about double teams and triple teams, and look, I'm watching the games. I'm watching the same games you are, and everyone keeps telling me that Pascal Siakam is getting double teamed and triple teamed, and I'm sorry, I'm seeing him guarded one-on-one by Gabe Vincent and Duncan Robinson. Yes, there are more and more teams that are sending a second defender to him after he gets rolling. I'm sorry, did you watch Kawhi in his first game back? The Lakers were sending double teams to this guy before he even touched the ball. There is a different way that teams react to real superstars. Now, when playoff defenses tighten up on Pascal Siakam, we will see where the efficiency goes. Because right now, he is 7th on his own team in true shooting percentage. And that is as teams are adjusting. So what happens when you play better teams and the possessions really hone in and teams are no longer sending Gabe Vincent one-on-one against you? Instead, you're having to deal with their best defender on a nightly basis. The regular season is for frauds. I'm telling you right now, there are so many guys who have dominated the regular season but have choked in the playoffs. Show me once in the playoffs. Show me once as a first option in the playoffs. You have had 3 entire rounds so far. Pascal Siakam has had 3 rounds as a first option. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen a closer. I haven't seen a guy who sees the court properly. I see a guy who can put up a lot of really nice numbers because when you handle the ball a lot, you get a lot of assists. And I don't know if you realize this, but the Raptors are looking to run on Siakam transition. And Siakam's one of the worst transition players on this team per possession, per point. But despite this, they continue to do this. And because they're trying to do this, there's a lot of times where you'll see that players on his team will just allow him to get a defensive rebound. You think he's a dominant rebounder? You think these 8-9 rebounds that he's getting right now are like important rebounds? They're not. Pascal Siakam is not a great rebounder. He's not at all a great rebounder. I don't think Scottie Barnes is a great rebounder. I don't think Precious Achiuwa, who is, by the way, twice as good as those guys this year, is a great rebounder. Great rebounders like Rudy Gobert, that's a great rebounder. Okay, that's a guy who can actually change the game on the glass. Pascal Siakam is grabbing defensive rebounds, running up the court, dribble, right? Team sends a double, he kicks it out to the corner, and boom, it's an assist if it's a made shot, and if it's not a made shot, it's not an assist. But you ask yourself the honest question. Does the offense look good to you? With Siakam running point, does this look good to you? Last year with Fred VanVleet running point, did it look good to you? Well, if it doesn't look good with one guy and it doesn't look good with the other guy, is it possible that we could at least try to hand the ball to the 21-year-old emerging superstar, in my opinion, on your roster who needs those reps right now, who sees himself as a point guard, instead of trying this weirdo offense in which every single player can run the point? Look, I understand the value of that. And scheme related, there are certain teams you want to do that against. But seriously, man, right now when your offense is bleeding and you can't buy a bucket for 5-minute stretches and teams are going on like these massive runs as your offense goes through drought after drought after drought, and I don't know what Trevor Gleeson is doing, is it possible to just hand the ball to your best decision maker and say, hey, you do something with it? And if passing to Siakam is what Scottie wants to do, which is what he will do, because he's not an idiot, Siakam is an elite second option. Siakam is an elite transition player. If he doesn't have the ball, he's an elite transition player. He can fill the lanes. But I see less and less of Siakam doing that. I see more and more of Siakam ISOs. ISO this, ISO that, ISO left, ISO right. 55% true shooting percentage, that is not elite. That is not elite. I don't think Kawhi doesn't shoot 55% true shooting percentage. LeBron never shot 55% true shooting percentage. Nope. Giannis does not shoot 55% true shooting percentage. Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, these guys do not shoot 55% true shooting percentage. 55% true shooting percentage is almost league average. That's almost league average. Your superstar, who is taking the most shots in the entire NBA and has one of the highest usages in the NBA, is 28 years old, is shooting average. Not a great three-point shooter. Not providing a great deal of spacing or screen setting for anyone else on the court. Is your offense working? And if it's not working, then what are we doing here? What are we doing? This video is not going to do well. I know that. I know that. I know that because the truth hurts. The truth sucks. And I will not punch down because 2 years from now, when Siakam is either a second option on this team or has been traded and or has signed with another team and is either first round fodder or a second option on that team, I won't say I told you so. Or maybe I will, but I won't spend time talking about him at that point because then the universe will have balanced out. It will make sense to me. But right now, this doesn't make sense to me. This offense doesn't make sense to me. I don't get it. I don't understand how this is supposed to work. And by the way, I still think the Raptors are going to be really good. despite all of this. This is not a doom and gloom thing. I'm not reacting to a loss. I still think they're going to be really good. I think the Raptors are going to be a top 4 seed, even with Siakam dominating every possession, even with Siakam at 32% usage. It won't matter because this team has too many weapons defensively. They're too well coached overall. Fred VanVleet is quite impactful. Scottie Barnes is really good. There's a lot of talent on this team. It's just, I worry when I see fans saying we don't need to trade OG because he's having these really terrible shooting nights. And, Scottie's not a superstar because, look, he's averaging 15 points per game. And Fred VanVleet sucks because, look, he just went 0 for 11. And I'm seeing all of these players struggle in this offense. And I'm like, man, is this what happens when an offense is run through a guy who shouldn't have an offense run through him? Pretty much. Anyway, if you like this video, hit subscribe, hit like. If you don't like this video, you probably won't like this video. You're probably going to downvote it. It's going to kill the algorithm. That's okay too. That's what this channel is for. It's to have honest discussions. And look, someone accused me in the last video of being a Raptor fanboy. Are you insane? Listen to this. I'm not a Raptor fanboy. I am a basketball Puritan. That sounds a little bit arrogant and probably does not make me very likable, but I have studied this game and love this game in ways that I cannot describe. Basketball has been my life for as long as I can remember. And no, this is not just a pitch for you to hit subscribe because I love basketball and you love basketball so we can be friends on this channel. No, what I'm trying to say is that I learned this game at a very young age, and I love watching it played correctly. And there are teams that play this game correctly. The San Antonio Spurs under Tim Duncan come to mind. Beautiful. The Golden State Warriors, just beautiful. It's a beautiful way to play the game. What I'm watching with the Raptors, this is not beautiful. But what annoys me is that the tools are there to make it beautiful. I just don't know if the egos will allow that to happen. I guess that's what I'm saying. This has been a rant. And look, all of the videos on this channel are not like this. This is probably one of the few that are. If you don't like rants and if you need something a little bit more concrete, substantial, and analytically driven and more, I don't know, less hot takey. Is this hot take? Is this a hot take? No. Anyway, look, if you need something a little bit more substantial than Robert ranting about Siakam and fake superstars, check out the last 2 videos. They're not like this at all. They're breaking down 18 plays from Scottie's rookie season and breaking down why I think Christian Koloko is going to be a defensive juggernaut in the NBA going forward. They're actual video breakdowns. I'm not just talking into a mic, but you know what? I think I needed to do this. This is a cathartic experience for me. I'm sharing it with you. If you agree, let me know. If you disagree, let me know as well. As I said,